Welcome to your new home. Your charity-approved home. The housing your charity, and others like them, promote as the successful resolution to your homeless odyssey. The happily ever after they endorse far and wide through the media and their own fundraising campaigns. Your new life. Your better life. The life they reckon you deserve. Welcome to your reckoning. Time and money become your mortal enemies. A dearth of pennies, an overabundance of minutes, they unite to slowly weaken you. You can't afford to go out. You can't afford to stay in. You can't afford to work. You can't afford to relax. The amount of mental energy consumed by stretching the pennies while filling the minutes is staggering. It is constant. It is exhausting. You set financial targets no one truly has a chance of achieving under the circumstances, and steel yourself while the minutes slowly drag you down. Though theoretically possible, the reality prevents you from achieving these almost laughable penny-pinching goals. When you invariably fail to reach them, you mentally beat yourself up for that failure because they were technically attainable. That guilt, that self-flagellation adds more fuel to the already unbearable daily pressure of filling time. You conduct a lot of trial and error research, and the errors are costly. Oh, so costly. The margin of error for mistakes is non-existent. Because misspent pennies add up quickly. Spilling milk at the wrong time of the month is a financial catastrophe. You don't cry, you chastise yourself for your clumsiness. And the continual self-recrimination over this and other gaffes that would be nothing more than trivial hiccups under normal living conditions adds to the already exhausting task of getting through the day. Poverty is not a normal living condition, but you make do the best you can. You grow accustomed to the dry cereal for breakfast. The ketchup sandwiches for lunch. The toasted ketchup sandwiches when the bread has surpassed its expiry date and you need to tear off the green bits in order to eat it. The 1-cup tea bags stretched out to 4. After the 4th cup you're just drinking bitter water. The single can of vegetables or half cups of rice for dinner. Butter is a luxury you quickly abandon. Meat is a luxury you quickly abandon. Fulfilling your daily nutritional requirements, a luxury you quickly abandon. You suffer through 1 day of fasting per week, and regularly make the effort to suffer through 2. It grows easier as your stomach shrinks, your weight drops, and your body requires less food to sustain itself. You are literally wasting away, but it proves cost-effective, so you accept the physical deterioration as a blessing, not a burden. Every pound lost is a penny saved. You space your showers out to every other day, then every second day, sometimes even a third, so you can save the pennies consumed by the electricity required to heat the water. Shaving becomes a once-a-week ritual you eventually abandon as another luxury you cannot afford. You change your underwear twice a week, then dispense with wearing it altogether because it is an unnecessary piece of clothing. You wash your clothes in the sink with dishwashing liquid. You wash your face and hands with dishwashing liquid. You wash your hair with dishwashing liquid. Just add water. And keep adding water to avoid replacing it as long as possible. You carefully separate your toilet paper along its perforated allowances, then painstakingly tear it in half again. You try to tear it in quarters, but it proves unpleasantly unworkable. Trial and error. As the weeks stretch endlessly on, you put off the most basic of tasks in order to have something to do later. If you clean in the morning, you have nothing to do to fill the afternoon. By the time afternoon rolls around, the evening's emptiness hovers in your thoughts. And as the evening slowly ticks by, you cheer yourself with the thought that holding off your chores will give you something to fill your day tomorrow. So you put them off. And put them off. And put them off. Over time, the natural sluggishness that develops from doing nothing kicks in, and you eventually lack the energy needed to complete the simplest of tasks. And when your living space is so modest, removing your shoes makes the room look unnaturally cluttered. You lose heart at the Sisyphean futility of it all anyway. Comfort is a luxury you cannot afford. When there is no conceivable space to place a chair, let alone a small table or desk, without adding to the already crushing claustrophobia of your room, you have no choice but to conduct the daily mechanics of living on your bed, sleeping, eating, reading, counting the minutes that have yet to be filled, counting the pennies you can't afford to spend, staring at the spiders as they weave their webs in the corners of the ceiling, commiserating with the flies as they become ensnared in their final home to await their looming deaths. You appreciate their futility and watch their struggles to escape with dispassionate indifference. Spiders and flies are not the only visitors who graze my humble home with their presence. There are also snails. How they get in I have never worked out. The back door leading out of my room has no lock, but it has a handle to turn in order to gain entry. I remember a cat we owned while I was growing up in Canada, Tigger, who had figured out how to open the outside door after weeks of patient feline study. A single leap, some determined wrestling, and voila! Freedom to rut in the streets as all self-respecting cats do. She later gave birth to 4 adorable kittens, beginning the process on top of me while I was asleep in bed. After the on-the-spot birds and bees talk valiantly delivered by my mother, who had been woken by my screams, Tigger, previously thought to be male, was thereafter called Miss Tiggy and sent for a little operation that resulted in yet another awkward life lesson at the feet of my poor, grossly underappreciated mother. Those are the memories that charities can't taint, can't poison, can't take away from you. But opening a door is a feat I am still reasonably certain snails lack the intellectual capacity, let alone the manual dexterity to accomplish. But enter they do, uninvited and slimily unpleasant, especially when you inadvertently step on one with your bare foot and hear the sickening crunch of its shell as its shattered fragments pierce your foot. I regularly stock up on salt to remove the snails from those ubiquitous hard-to-reach places. They are relentless. Still, they are company for the spiders. Maybe the spiders are letting them in. Who knows? I have never been able to figure it out, a mystery of life as perplexing as the Bermuda Triangle, Bigfoot, and the socks that go missing from the tumble dryer. Maybe the snails are stealing our socks. Who knows? As for the horrors of the communal kitchen, I don't use it. Its temporary closure due to the risk of E. coli infection from an infestation of maggots the summer after I was forced into tenancy validated that little decision above and beyond all reasonable doubt. They were cooking for the snails presumably. Spiders and maggots and snails, oh my. Home sweet bloody home. The revulsion doesn't end there. When you live in one of 5 tiny, self-contained rooms that have been converted from a former single-family dwelling, you slowly develop a scientific knowledge related to the odors emitted by the feces of your fellow tenants as they waft through the pipes into your minuscule en suite. You become privy to their eating habits without ever seeing them put food in their mouths. You learn to differentiate between the smoky acrid scent of charcoal and the sickly, gag-inducing stench of rotten eggs. You begin to fear the occasional unrecognizable aromas that are beyond your knowledge, but just as unpleasant. The roar of Flushing from Flat 4 makes my heart sink more than all the other flats combined. He obviously isn't healthy, and I fear possible unseen contagion spreading into my room in the very air I breathe. I tried shutting the door to my bathroom with some success, but it takes hours to dissipate, and I find myself unable to relieve my own bodily functions without fighting the urge to vomit at the same time. I would open my back door to allow fresh air to enter the room, but it also gives the worst of the season's elements, rain, snow, heat, cold, unfiltered access. It is all but impossible to escape. On the bright side, it made the cost-saving decision to ration showers that much easier to bear. You search for silver linings wherever you can find them, even in the shit of others. Escape, even temporary, is virtually impossible. The reality of your lodging follows you wherever you go. Shopping expeditions consist of popping into coffee houses and asking the baristas for permission to use their facilities without making the required purchase, then using the opportunity to surreptitiously pocket their sugar, condiments, napkins, and toilet paper. If you're lucky, you find a replacement roll perched on the tank you easily whisk into your rucksack before making your polite escape. More often than not, you find yourself sitting on the defecatory throne, slowly unraveling long swaths of perforated sheets and meticulously folding them to hide in your pocket with a minimum of tearing. Toilet paper serves multiple purposes, so you never waste money on facial tissue or paper towels. When the formerly sympathetic baristas grow suspicious of your thievery and understandably put an end to your weekly visits, you swallow the embarrassment, shrug defiantly, and move on to the next cafe. My conscience had weakened considerably over 2 years, enough to allow my transformation into the Al Capone of condiments, but it would still not allow me to cross the threshold into outright theft. I would take gratuitous advantage of the free peripherals surrounding a purchase, but I would not steal a purchased product itself. It was weakening, but my conscience was still waging an ambitious fight. Not that it mattered. Once I had been identified as a tenant of that house, the local Costa Coffee franchise refused to serve me after my 3rd visit. I hadn't been stealing their condiments under the unspoken rule you don't create messes in your own backyard. It didn't matter. The local grapevine had informed the franchise owner I was a resident of that house, and I was automatically approved for the same banishment served to the other tenants of my humble home. I vowed to stop supporting all shops in the Costa chain from that point forward. I wouldn't even lower myself to pilfer their condiments and toilet paper, a Pyrrhic retaliation admittedly, and drenched in hypocrisy, but it was the only weapon I had. The community whispers also reached the local Sainsbury's supermarket, and I soon found myself accompanied by bored security guards discreetly following me from aisle to aisle, muttering to their colleagues through their radios. I couldn't use the automated self-serve checkouts without a staff member hovering to ensure I didn't use the opportunity to slip a 5-finger discount into my pocket or help myself to a plastic carrier bag without charging myself the obligatory 20p fee. One time I was even searched by 2 security guards and a store manager, and my shopping emptied item by item to be checked for the corresponding entry on the receipt. There was no theft to uncover. I had even paid the 20p for the plastic shopping bag. Their mandatory apology after the public embarrassment was provided with the same dry insincerity as my acceptance of it. Even standing outside to smoke a cigarette to take advantage of their free customer Wi-Fi access to check emails and social media messages from Canada invariably led to a security guard coming outside and asking me to move along, or simply lean against the railing and stare directly at me. I had grown used to this treatment while I had been living on the streets, but had assumed it would end when I was respectably housed. Silly me. Social housing is wonderful in theory, but the surrounding businesses and residents are more than vigilant in reminding you social housing residents are not socially acceptable, are not welcome, and are not wanted. Putting humiliation aside, it gets on your nerves. I found myself toying with the idea of stealing, not from need or hunger like Jean Valjean with his nobly appropriated loaf of bread, but out of pure spite. A symbolic middle finger thrust in the faces of my false accusers. I have come close to doing it many times, too many times for comfort. Morality is a twisted referee. Because the uncomfortable truth I can only admit to myself in the barest of whispers. I don't blame them. I live in that house. That house you can identify not by number, but by the overgrown weeds, soiled mattress, drug paraphernalia, and beer cans littering the front lawn. That house that serves as a regular stopping place for other addicts and their drug dealers, for police cars and ambulances, for parties, fights and chaos that often spills into the streets, usually in the small hours of the morning when the neighborhood is trying to sleep. That house that gives birth to the vandalism, theft, and violence that plagues the surrounding businesses and properties. That house the community knows to be crisis charity-approved holding pen for addicts. That house the community rightfully despises. And I don't blame them. I despise it myself, and feel ashamed for being associated with it. Ashamed for living there. Ashamed for living. All I can do is grit my teeth, thicken my skin, and broaden my shoulders to bear the weight of the scorn and shame as I conduct my necessary business outside my room. And when I return I can only lie in bed, avoiding the snails, avoiding the housemates, and watching the spider webs to avoid thinking of the infinite minutes that stretch out before me all day, every week, every month, every year. And flinch when the periodical flushing from flat 4 brings the olfactory reminder that even the very air I breathe is at the defecatory mercy of others. It is existential suffering at its most banal. This is the life you enter when placed in charity-approved housing. These are the living conditions the charities promote as the successful resolution to all your homeless woes. Another happy tick for their books, another success story to promote in their endless fundraising campaigns. This is the solution the charities demand the government make easier to provide, and campaign for legislation to force all property owners to accept. No charity worker or volunteer will open their own home to the tribe of the homeless, and understandably so, but they are more than willing to chastise other property owners for sharing the same understandable fears and concerns. It is self-righteous finger-pointing hypocrisy of the highest degree. These are not sheltered sanctuaries from the dangers of the streets. These are holding pens for charities to shelve their process clients, often throwing alcoholics and addicts together in a single house to succumb to their chemical dependencies hand in hand in a free-fall of enablement. This is not a step to independence, for the conditions make it virtually impossible to obtain employment, let alone keep it for any length of time. Whether intentional or not, the tenants are simply set up for failure. Many do, and find themselves falling deeper into their addictions, falling back onto the streets, and calling on the charities that put them there to pick up the pieces again. You don't need a career in business journalism to know the best customer is a repeat customer. This is not happily ever after housing. This is homelessness with a roof. This is not successful resolution. This is erosion of the soul.